Alright, broadcasting live and direct from the Poe Production Studios, it's your boy Poe Pro, and today we are going to discuss the Poe Pros and Cons of the Horseman album. So I received the Horseman album today in the mail. Really cool little collectible item. I know it's a little tough to see on camera, but a little bit of a 3D gloss design to the characters on there. They pop out a little bit on here. You know, nice little foldable packet here. Got the CD inside. Got some pictures of the Horsemen, their characters. And the nicest little thing on here is under the CD, you got a picture of all four members from 1999. So kind of cool that you have a little origin picture of them. And that's around the time when they first started collaborating. So before we get into the actual review, just a little background about the Horsemen. The Horsemen consists of four rappers. You got Cannabis, Rascass, Killah Priest, and Corrupt. The first time these four appeared on a song together was on Cannabis' 2000 BC album under the song Horse Mentality. And since then, they popped up every now and then collaborating with one another. There was always hype for an album to come out by these guys. So finally, 21 years later, they finally put an album out. And let's see if it lives up to the expectations. M80, the A&R manager of this album, or executive producer I should say, called this album the Underground Detox. For those of you that don't know what that means, that is an album by Dr. Dre that never came out, Detox, that was hyped up forever and ever. So we're going to find out, is this album good? Is it bad? Am I going to say great things about it? Am I going to be cynical about it? I'm going to do a little bit of everything. So to start things off, we are going to rank each song. On the bottom of my tier ranking there, those little text bubbles there, that's basically just the names of the songs. I don't really have an image for a song. There's no videos corresponding with it. I just made little text bubbles with the names of the songs there. So starting off, we got Sintro, which is playing right now in the background. It's actually a cool tone setter. It kind of gives you this apocalyptic vibe. You got a dude reading the Book of Revelations. Each of the four rappers represents one of the four horsemen. You got Rascass as Pestilence, Cannabis is War, Corrupt is Famine, and Killah Priest is Death. And each of them had their own little rap jingle on this, couple bars. To be honest, I do believe in 2015 there was an album teaser teasing that this album was going to come out. So I do recognize the song. But as an introduction, it sets the tone absolutely fine. And you know what? As an intro, I think it sets the tone well. Each of the rappers had their own little parts that contribute to it. So I'm going to give the intro an A. And on perfect timing, we have Centaurs popping in the next song. Now, as I stated before, Sintro technically kind of came out before. There was an album teaser back in 2015 when there was some hype for the Horseman album to possibly come out then. So it was old. But they threw on a little bit of new stuff on there. That was one of the fears I had coming with this album, that am I going to hear old material? And the first song that pops on, the first proper song, Centaurs, is old material. This song was originally released on Cannabis album, Time Flies, Life Dies, Phoenix Rise, as Bronze Horses, featuring Killah Priest. It was originally only Killah Priest and Cannabis. However, the Horseman album did something a little different. Granted, yes, it is an old song in Centaurs, but they also added Rascass and Corrupt. And they have a really cool little back and forth verse for the third verse. It kind of makes you wish that the Horsemen did that more often, more back and forth moments. However, even that is old too. That is from a song called Horsemen Enforcements on Cannabis Brainstream mixtape, which isn't really that well known a song. So you took two old songs, added them together to make one new song. And you know what? In all honesty, subjectively, it works. I know this is going to go against my mentality because as an insider fan, I'm going to be disappointed hearing old material, but you injected life into Centaurs. I honestly kind of thought it was sort of a boring track with just Cannabis and Killer Priest. Adding Rascas and Corrupt on it and taking the acapella from their verse, it's mixed on perfectly on this song. It adds a lot of needed energy to it, and all four of them kind of do shine on it. So that is an example of taking something old, tweaking it a bit, and making something new out of it, and it's working. Now, as a song on its own merit, say I never knew about Centaurs or about Horsemen Enforcements, this is actually a banger of an opening song. You got a good banging beat for them, they ride it very well. The chorus is a little silly where Cannabis is like, I'm a horseman, like he's neighing while saying it, but I actually like the song. I think it's a really good set thematically for the album. So I'm going to put this Centaurs up in S tier. I think it's a great song by the Horsemen. Even though it is old, I still think it's a wonderful song. The next track, this shit right here. This shit right here came out on this shit right here. Back in 2010, Rascas's Adidas album, listed as song 3 on disc 1. This song is 11 years old and was already commercially released 11 years ago. The cynic in me would make that a D instantly, because why are you masquerading an old song as new? This is a bad sign for this album. You got the first 3 tracks on here are old songs. But you know what? Let's go to this shit right here. As a song on its own merits, all 4 of your Horsemen are on there. Everybody shines. I think everyone has a pretty good verse. I especially like Cannabis' verse on this because he's kind of rapping about all the zodiacs in the whole verse. Like he's like saying Capricorn was the first one born. I lock horns with Taurus and Aries. Rascas is kind of spitting some funny lyrics. Killer Priest is talking about like resurrecting Shakespeare and stuff like that, and how he's like the hip-hop version of Shakespeare, and Corrupt is just doing like his whole gangster vibe on it. Honestly, as a track it works. It's a fine enough song on its own, but this is the problem. Comparing this with Centaurs, there's nothing new added to this. It's an 11-year-old song. On its own merit, I would probably put this in S tier. I think it's a good song, but as an insider, you're disappointing me putting out an 11-year-old track on this album. I'm going to only put it in A tier. That disappointment vibe pulls it down for me. And I'm going to try to not have that happen too much in case there's any other moments of recycled material on here. The next track, though, is our proper first new track, Champion. Champion has a bit of a reggae vibe to it. You have Planet Asia popping up on this song, Chino XL, and the guy doing the chorus right now, Blackamore. Has a bit of a reggae vibe to it, very booming bass line, bit of a minimalistic beat, but it works. But here's the thing. You only have 2 of the 4 Horsemen on here. That's a little disappointing to me. Because on the Horsemen's first release, if you want to call it an official release, the Horseman Project, back in 2003, every song with these dudes featured almost every one of them. You didn't have any song on here besides the song Scrolls at the very end. Any song on here with less than 3 of them on there. Almost all 4 of them were on every song. This album, you're going to find out there's a whole bunch of tracks where it's maybe 2, maybe 3 of them, and it just feels a little incomplete. Now, granted, that opens up the way for other artists to shine alongside the Horsemen, just to show a little versatility with other artists, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the same kind of thing happened on the Firm album with Nas, AZ, Foxy Brown, and Nature. You had a lot of focus on guest artists, which is both a gift and a curse, but you kind of should make sure you satisfy your own audience and just kind of have the Horsemen primarily on it. Now, that's just kind of comparing apples and oranges. To be honest, Planet Asia is a very good rapper. Chino XL is amazing on this song. If anything, Chino XL completely bodies this song with his verse. His verse is like completely show stealing on here. Outclasses everybody. But everyone who does contribute to this song does a really admirable job. Where do I put the song Champion on this CD? I would give it an A. I think it's actually a pretty good song on its own right. Little disappointing you don't have all the Horsemen on the song, but you know, it is what it is. I think out of the people that are on it, it's a good thing. But you're gonna notice some other stuff. A lot of the features and stuff are all West Coast artists. Planet Asia's West Coast. Chino XL, despite the fact he was from East Orange, New Jersey, relocated out to LA, so he's technically a West Coast artist now. Other artists that pop up on this as feature spots are all West Coast artists, which is another argument I have for this album, and I think some of these songs were not really intended for the Horsemen album. It's like Rascas and Corrupt had a song, Yo Priest, hop on this. That's what I kind of feel happens on some of the tracks on here. I kind of feel like they might have been meant for other projects, but let's just put it on the Horsemen album. I just feel that with this album. That's the cynic in me. Actually, come to think of it, I'm going to give Champion a B. I like it, but it doesn't stand out as much to me. The next track we have is Morticians. Morticians is the first proper song with all four of the rap artists on here, the Horsemen. And it's all original material, brand new beat. And honestly, all of them shine on here. The production's very strange on this. It's almost like a combination of like J.S. Bach with like Pink Floyd. And it's a really mystifying kind of beat to it. All four of the artists do shine on here, and one person that kind of stole my attention a bit on this album is Corrupt. Corrupt really kind of injects a lot of extra passion into this album on the songs he appears on. The only downside to Morticians is this. This is the first of many gibberish kind of Cannabis verses. Cannabis back in 2003 on the real first released by the Horsemen called the Horsemen Project, and Cannabis 2021 are two very different rappers. Now, not to say that it's bad, but Cannabis went from being complex but not complicated to now just being complex and complicated. He raps verses where you're listening to it like, what the hell is he talking about? He says stuff like smoking turtle with Santa on here. Granted, turtle's probably like slang for weed or something like that, but going ham with the hammers and radio scanners. I told the bitch to make me a sandwich. What? What are you talking about? It's just kind of in gibberish territory. As a song by the Horsemen, I'm going to still give it an A because it is nice to get some new material by them. And they all kind of come well on it. Cannabis verse is just sort of weird, but it works for the song. It's a weird song on its own right. Our next track is 1 Second. This is the first major departure in production on here, and I don't mean that in a bad way. You kind of go from this high octane battle rap, aggressive style stuff to a bit more of a chill West Coast sounding song. This is Rascas, Corrupt, and Hus Kingpin. Hus Kingpin's another featured artist, another West Coast artist. This entire song, even without knowing any background of the Horsemen, just sounds like a West Coast track. There's nothing wrong with that. If anything, for the Horsemen album, it kind of brings a little new diversity to the production. It slows things down a bit. It's a lot more chill of a song. Everybody sounds good on it. Again, Corrupt kind of steals the show to me on this song. I think it's a pretty solid song. But again, only 2 members of the Horsemen, and it doesn't really sound like it was even meant for the Horsemen album. And how does Hus Kingpin sound on it? Fine. Nothing really great or awful with it, but it's a good song. I give it a B. The next song popping up is Love and War, and this is probably the weirdest, most risky song by the Horsemen. There's nothing more gangster than Pat Benatar, Love is a Battlefield. To be honest, I really like this song. There's a lot of people who've listened to this album that are very torn with this song, because this is by far the most risky song by them, almost trying to be a bit of a commercial-esque crossover song. This sounds like something you would hear Slaughterhouse rap to. But I like it. It injects a bit more diversity with this group, and you're trying to open up to a wider audience without really compromising your skill. Again, a little bit of a negative aspect to it is it's only Killah Priest and Razzcast rapping. Corrupt pops on for some ad-libs here and there. Cannabis, nowhere to be found. But you know what? It's a love song. I don't think I've ever heard Cannabis do a love song. It will almost probably sound funny. Maybe be talking about aliens or something like that. But honestly, on the track, I think it's a really good song. It's a bit more of a risky step that they took on here, but I think it works. My only other little negative criticism is Killah Priest's second verse, the energy level just drops. He gets like way too quiet on there telling a little bit of a story. But compared with his first verse, where it has kind of like this anguish, this agony to it, then you go to a second verse, which is more a bit of a comedic side. It's just, the energy just kind of dies. Listen. But overall, as a song, I like it. We're opening up to a bigger audience without compromising too much skill, and I wish there was a bit more of that on here. Poe Pro would probably give this an S, but I know that would probably annoy a lot of people. I'm just going to put it in A tier. And by the way, I'm not really ranking these in order of what songs are better than the others, for the most part. They're just plopping them in there. I give this an A tier. There's some people that really hate Love and War. They think it's like one of the weakest songs in the album, but I happen to like it. Alright, the next song is Believer. And the Justin Bieber in me says Belieber. Alright, I will not bring in Justin Bieber's name into the Horseman album review ever again. This song was kind of put out on YouTube. It's another new track with everyone. Although you only have 3 of the 4 Horsemen. Now technically when they put this song out on YouTube as a bit of a promo, it was clumped in together with the next track, Believer, which is a Killah Priest solo and just him on there. So if you put them together, you sort of have all 4 guys on it, and it kind of bridges into Believer anyway. But just this song on its own, I love the energy. Again, Corrupt is just surprising me on this album. Like, compared with the Horseman project, his game went way up on here. I actually think Corrupt is the most improved member out of everyone on here. Razzcast is really good. Killah Priest is absent on it, but I'll kind of give this a pass for having almost all 4 of them. Then you got Cannabis. It's a new verse by him. I really like it, but there's one awful production choice that just ruins the song for me, and unfortunately the picky side of me is going to win out on this. Razzcast and Corrupt, totally clear on the microphone. When Cannabis comes on, it has this overdubbed weird vocal effect. Now the video, they disguise it to make Cannabis like this supercomputer. Take away the visual and then you only focus on the production choice. Why, oh why, does it sound like Cannabis rapped this verse on a Zoom meeting? They recorded it off there and just put it in the studio and just added some effects. It sounds like a badly decompressed MP3 file from the Napster days of someone not compressing the file right. It almost has like that weird watery digitized feel to it. I'm just going to fast forward to his verse and let you hear it. And the sad thing is, I like Cannabis' verse, but this is so distracting to a point, it's needlessly distracting and it ruins the song to me. Actually, Cannabis' verse will pop up in 2 seconds. I'm going to just shut up for a second. And it's such a shame, because I really think it's a strong verse by Cannabis too on this song, which a lot of his appearances were dying for some strong verses by him. The funny thing is, on a lot of Cannabis' more recent projects, stuff is impressive from a technical perspective, but in terms of listenability, he takes some weird risks with things, and this falls into that category. Like, why would you put it out in this quality? Why not just re-record it and get fresh vocals of whatever engineer was mixing the music? I want to give this song an S tier, but honestly, like, that baffling choice to make the vocal effects sound like what they are, I almost want to make this a B tier song, but I'm going to keep it up in A. It's still a strong enough song on its own right, but that choice pulled it down from S tier. A needlessly weird choice to make. Alright, the next track is like an interlude by Killah Priest called False Prophets. And this is a cool song. Ninjas and martial arts is to Wu-Tang Clan as the Bible is to Killah Priest. This would have been a cool song if everybody kind of dropped a verse on here, or maybe like it was a little bit longer. But on its own, I think it's actually a pretty strong interlude. It's one of the highlights on the album to me. Where do I put it for the ranking? I'm going to put it on a B. Mostly for the fact it's more of an interlude. Killah Priest is like on topic, kind of dropping some biblical stuff on here, and it fits the vibe of the Horsemen. But it's a minute long. And it just kind of serves its purpose right there. And honestly, the song's done by the time I'm done talking about it. The next track is called Apocalypse Now. And this is another one of those new Horseman tracks featuring all four of them. And to be honest, this is one of the biggest highlights of the album to me. This goes in S tier. Got all four members, a pretty cool beat, almost kind of sounds like something Dr. Dre would have made. Everyone kind of rapping this apocalyptic, aggressive style, a lot of imagery thrown in there. Everyone comes off well on this song, all four members. Makes me wish there were more songs like this. This is what I was expecting there to be more of on this album. A little bit more like aggressive battle, hungry kind of raps on there. Stuff with the weird orchestral vibe, maybe kind of having a bit of an apocalyptic tone. This is a little bit like what I wanted to expect. This sounds like previous collaborations by them. But you know, the album kind of falls short with kind of giving these moments. But they're there. When they are there, they're there. The next track is Impossible. Impossible is silly zaniness. All four of the members come off really good on this. RBX from the West Coast is kind of representing the timer. Mission Impossible, this message will self-destruct. It's a very zany song, and it also kind of is like a bit more mainstream accessible. People are going to know the Mission Impossible sample, the Little Impossible singing sample. I think, I don't know what artist, Rihanna or somebody, I don't know, I might have this wrong. But it's actually a good song. But there's one fatal flaw to it. It's also 11 years old. However, it wasn't officially released on Razzcast's Adidas album. It was a download-only exclusive bonus track, and it was only there for people that bought Razzcast's album. So I've had this song for the last 11 years. However, and I know this is kind of going a little bit against my mentality about being very, very critical and harsh on them re-releasing material. However, compared with this shit right here, which actually really was on the album, Impossible was a download-only exclusive. So you might have been out of the loop and missed it when it came out. So this was just something that never got properly released. There's no changes to the song. However, I'm going to give this S tier. This is one of the highlights on the album. The next song on here is Burger King. You can have it your way. This is probably the most different sounding song on the album. You got a very piano-laced beat, with even pianos providing the bass lines. But one glaring thing with this, again, it's only Rascas and Killa Priest, and also Phil Da Agony, who's rapping right now. Phil Da Agony is another West Coast artist. Again, this sounds like something that was probably meant for like a Rascas album. Maybe they called Killa Priest to hop on the track, make it Horseman affiliated. As a song on its own right, I honestly think this is one of the highlights on the album, because this song is so zany and wacky that it's fun. Killa Priest verse is actually a good show stealer in my opinion on here. So I actually think it is a very strong song. Is it a good Horseman song? It's up for debate. But, you know, what is a Horseman song? I honestly think it should be songs that feature at least 3 or more of them. But it's still a great song on its own, and I'm going to give it an A. I'll just be quiet, let you hear Killa Priest's verse, because his verse is coming up, and I think this is one of the highlights on the album. It's a very silly verse, but it's cool. Alright, the next song is the title track called The Last Ride, which originally when this album was released MP3 only, that was the final song, which made sense. Now this song technically features all 4 of them, however Killa Priest is talking on the song. He doesn't drop a verse, but I kind of consider it a track with all 4. This is a cool song, has a very Western motif to it. Technically all 4 members are present on it. This is more of a highlight for Cannabis because he has a bit of a longer verse than everybody. And it's kind of a cool track. The end of it's actually really nice because you have Killa Priest kind of giving an interview with Rascas, kind of interjecting some ad-libs, talking about how this is their debut finale album. And you know, they're kind of explaining a bit of how they didn't put stuff out in the past because you got 4 like top caliber lyricists and all the personalities are clashing. So it's probably hard for all of them to be on the same wavelength to put out an album, and it's a good way to end things, I think. But it makes you kind of fiend for a bit more, even when you hear them say this is going to be their debut finale album. But I honestly think this is one of the highlights. I'm going to put this up in A tier. But what was awesome was when I got my album today in the mail, I noticed on the back there's a hidden bonus cut. I got excited. I'm like, oh, there's another song by them I didn't know about. The bonus song is called Ride On, featuring Tragedy Gaddafi. As soon as I saw that, I said, I know exactly what song this is, before even listening to it. Historic, with the Horsemen, featuring Tragedy Gaddafi. Another old track, but there's a twist. Unlike this shit right here, and unlike Impossible, where there were no changes to an old song, they changed this one up. They changed the order of the rappers. They also sort of got rid of the chorus, because originally the song was like Rascas verse, chorus, Tragedy Gaddafi verse, chorus, Corrupts verse, chorus, Cannabis verse, chorus, Killer Priest verse, chorus. It was a little long. It was like a 6-minute song. Now they just got rid of the chorus and they kind of have like 2 verses. I think Rascas and Cannabis, they go out of order, then Corrupt, Killer Priest, and then Tragedy Gaddafi closes off the album. Who cares? I honestly, when I saw that, I'm like, bonus track, I got pissed. Honestly, the cynic in me, I just want to give that a D, because you're already like hyping up the Horseman album, thinking, oh good, a song I don't know. Nope, it's not a song I don't know. It's just a gut punch to the bottom. Now, to be honest, I'm going to give this a C. A song on its own right, and I'm going to go to it because I didn't even fast forward the song. On its own right, it's an okay song. It has another one of those Western vibes to it. So kind of having it come right after The Last Ride and you have another Western style song, like I guess it's like their ride off into the sunset. Maybe they were going for that feel. But even when this song came out, it was on Cannabis' Fait Accompli album. I was not a fan of the Fait Accompli album by Cannabis. And even this song, I felt it was one of the weaker Horseman songs. All of them sound fine, and honestly, kind of getting rid of the chorus and having them rap more often, the song's not as exhausting. But this is just cheap. Don't give me a bonus song and make it a song that's like 7 years old. There's such a cheapness and superficial nature to doing that. So my last ranking is going to be the album as a whole. So let me give you the Poe Pros and the Cons of the Horseman album. As a pro, getting an actual physical copy of this and its presentation and artwork, the CD cover, the pictures inside, the liner notes, it's a nice project. I highly encourage anybody, support physical copies of music. Get CDs, get vinyl. It's a nice thing to own, I think, in terms of its presentation for what it looks like as a project. It's great. Top caliber CD. I think there's work and effort put into this that I have to appreciate. You have 4 elite lyricists in Rascas, Cannabis, Killer Priest, and Corrupt. Any one of their solo albums I would just pop on just because I like all 4 of the artists. They're all pretty good. Put them together, it's a match made in heaven in a way. You got 4 top-notch lyricists coming together making music. And just the historic nature of this CD, the fact that the Horsemen finally put out a commercially released album, that in and of itself should be recognized. And it's important to hip-hop music, the fact that they have an official released album. And that should absolutely be appreciated and recognized. Now the cynic in me is going to point out the cons and negative nature. And I'm kind of wrapping into the pros too. One of the biggest cons, as an insider fan that has followed these guys pretty extensively and kind of knows almost all the collaborations of the Horsemen or any time they get together, to have literally, and I'm a count, I won't count Cintro as being recycled because that was just an intro and a teaser. Centaurs is an old song. This shit right here is an old song. Impossible is an old song. And Ride On, the bonus song, is an old song. You got 4 songs out of 13 tracks. Sorry, 14 tracks with the bonus track that are old. That's a horrible con. However, as a pro, if you do not know about those songs and you're an outsider looking in and maybe you just haven't been peeping this group for the last like 10 plus years, and some of this material is new to you, they're good songs on their own merit. So that's a bit of a double-edged sword. The cynic in me is very mad at that. As an outsider, you can appreciate that. Another con, some of the songs on here, like I stated before when I was reviewing stuff, kind of feel like they might have been meant for other projects. Like 1 Second and Burger King sound the most like songs that don't belong on this album. They sound like something that was probably meant for like a Rascast release, because they're oozing in like West Coast feeling to them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're masquerading it as a Horseman release. Maybe it's meant for the album, maybe not. I feel it wasn't. But whatever, if it was, that's fine. They're good songs again on their own right. That's just me nitpicking a little bit. Another negative aspect, there's a lack of songs with all 4 of them on there. Out of all the tracks that have all 4 members, you have the intro, which I'll count that because each of them do drop a little bit of a verse. Centaurs has everybody. This shit right here has everyone. Morticians has everyone. Apocalypse Now has everybody. And technically The Last Ride and Ride On have everyone. That's only 7. Half the album has everyone on it. Compared with their previous album, The Horseman Project, like 90% of this had every rap artist on it. So it's just, I don't know, something about not having a lack of group unity is glaring. But again, it's just nitpicking. I'm being cynical, I'm finding little flaws with the album. What's another negative thing, if I want to say it? The other negative is this, and this is just me being a bit of a jerk here. Cannabis in 2020 versus Cannabis 2003 are 2 completely different people. There was a time when I would fiend to hear every single verse by Cannabis, and I used to download everything off Napster online just to hear stuff by the guy. I hate to say it, but he's like a shadow of his former self, and he's also the least involved member on here. Out of the 14 tracks, new songs that feature Cannabis, new verses by him, I'll just put it that way. Morticians is a new verse, Believer is a new verse, and Apocalypse Now and The Last Ride. There's only 4 new verses by Cannabis on here. And I think, honestly, this is the reason for a lot of these things coming out. Back in 2015, Rascast was trying to say that the Horsemen were dead and he was not on board for things. A couple years later, Cannabis leaves M80 as his manager. Now, M80 kind of inherited the Horseman Project album. I think they probably had some songs in the vault with everybody on there, and maybe they had to stretch out the playlist, and that's why you have an influx of Rascast. Rascast is everywhere in this album. He wasn't the most involved person last time around. So I kind of feel like this was just stretching out songs just to put it on the Horseman album. So it's a really cynical way of looking at things. But here's the thing. Where do I rank this album as a whole? Absolutely S tier. I mean, come on. Just the importance in hip-hop of the Horsemen putting out an album. This is like another Wu-Tang Clan. There's no reason to not appreciate this for what it is. Even the cynic in me, I still love this album. But I know there's flaws to it. Because I'm going to put it like this. If you gave me a studio quality version of the Horseman Project from 2003, that destroys the new album they just put out. This is gold, and they should have struck while the iron was hot and put out a fresh album. Maybe this was meant to be their first album. It's leaked material, and maybe that's why they took so long to put something out together. But on its own, the Last Ride by the Four Horsemen is still a great album. It's an excellent CD. Anyone that appreciates hip-hop music, I highly 100% recommend this album to everyone. My last con I'm going to give this album is this, though, and this isn't totally on fault of the Horsemen. This album was released, I believe, digitally, like June 18th, about 2 months ago, prior to me giving this review. Physical copies you were able to put in your orders, and they were supposed to start going out the end of June. Then it was the first week of July. Then it was the end of July. I finally got it today. August 13th, almost 2 months after I ordered the thing. The CD on its own cost $30. Anytime I've ever bought an album in stores or online, the most expensive I've ever paid for a single CD was $20. I know you have a fan base, and there's a high demand for this with the fans. Would I be willing to spend $30? Yeah, I don't mind doing it, but then when you kind of put on old material, that, from the consumer standpoint, isn't really satisfying for me. And to make matters even more silly, the shipping was $7 on this. I spent $37 on this album for something that normally in stores would cost me less than $20. For some material that's old for me, and the shipping was by media mail. I sent stuff out on eBay. Media mail. Media mail costs like $2 and change, maybe $3 depending on where it is, but most of the time it's always like $2.80 or something like that. So you're price gouging the fans. That's a con to me, just on a consumer standpoint. But as a product, it's a great album. So that kind of concludes the Poe Pros and Cons of the Horsemen album. I do highly recommend buying it, supporting this group somehow. Even if you don't want to buy and support, at least download the album, appreciate some of their material. They have 20 years worth of material. If anything, what they should have done was maybe take a lot of their old material and just put it out on a mixtape to hype up the sound. Because this album just all of a sudden came out of nowhere after waiting for 21 years. So they call this the Underground Detox. That's not a fair assessment. What I would call this album is the Duke Nukem Forever of hip-hop. An album that was in production for over a decade and ended up kind of falling flat in areas. But is it still good on its own right? Yes, and honestly, this is a lot better than Duke Nukem Forever. Anyway, this is your boy Poe Pro signing out. Peace, love, and happiness, wisdom, knowledge, supreme. Poe Pro blesses you all. One.